Picture this. It's a completely normal morning in December 2007 at a London police station. Everything is routine, right up until a man walks through the front doors looking absolutely exhausted and tells the desk officer he has amnesia. He says his mind is totally blank, but he thinks his name might be John Darwin. So the officer types the name into the system, hits enter, and just freezes. Because according to the official government records, John Darwin had been dead for 5 years. Welcome to our explainer on the astonishing, high-stakes reality of pseudocide. We're diving into the bizarre world of people who decided the absolute only way to fix their lives was to completely stop existing. Okay, so this story of John Darwin, it is the absolute perfect, most bizarre starting point. Back in 2002, Darwin took his canoe out into the freezing North Sea and simply vanished. The police searched, his family grieved, parts of a shattered paddle washed ashore. But here is the dark, almost movie-like reality of the whole thing. John Darwin was not at the bottom of the ocean. He was actually living in a secret, hidden room right next door to his family. He was literally eating, sleeping, and breathing just inches away from his own sons who were actively mourning his death. Which brings us to a really fascinating central mystery. How do you actually convince the world you no longer exist? Look, it's kind of a universal dark fantasy, isn't it? The ultimate clean break. Just dropping everything, walking away from your debts, your mistakes, your boss, and starting totally fresh. But to pull that off today, you can't just disappear physically. You have to completely erase a modern documentary identity. You've got to fool your family, your bank, the government, and the entire global digital grid, all at the exact same time.
There's actually a formal name for doing this: pseudocide. It's this incredibly intense crime that sits right at the extreme edge of human desperation and, honestly, extreme cunning. Because think about it, it requires a willingness to lie to absolutely everyone who ever loved you, every single day for the rest of your life. Today, we're going to track the wild evolution of this crime and see exactly how faking your own death went from being a surprisingly easy parlor trick to a virtually impossible digital trap.
To really grasp how much things have changed, we gotta look back at the golden age of reinvention. Back in the 18th century, if you just moved a couple of towns over, congratulations, you were basically a brand new person. Take the absolutely wild case of Lord Timothy Dexter in 1798. This guy was an eccentric, super wealthy American, and he didn't fake his death to escape prison or massive debt. No, he did it purely out of vanity. He staged his own elaborate funeral just to hear what people would say about him in their eulogies. An astonishing 3,000 mourners showed up, and Dexter just hid in the house and listened. He actually only blew his own cover when he burst out of hiding, absolutely furious because he didn't think his wife was crying hard enough. You can't make this stuff up.
But over time, pseudocide evolved from this weird, eccentric stunt into a high-stakes tool for geopolitical survival. Meet Juan Pujol Garcia, better known as Agent Garbo. He was a brilliant double agent who fed the Nazis fabricated intelligence during World War II, which was absolutely crucial in securing the success of D-Day. But as you'd expect, after the war ended, he had a massive target on his back. So what do? Well, with the help of MI5, he faked his death from malaria in Angola in 1949. And it worked perfectly. He vanished to Venezuela, opened a quiet little bookstore, and lived completely undetected for 36 years. Talk about playing the long game. So experts actually look at cases like Agent Garbo and classify them as institutional pseudocide. That's a highly strategic, government-orchestrated deception designed to save someone's life. We actually saw this again recently in 2018 when Ukrainian intelligence staged the assassination of a journalist to catch a real hitman. But that is vastly different from criminal pseudocide. That's your messy, desperate individuals who are just trying to outrun their debts, prison sentences, or personal failures, and they usually leave nothing but total devastation in their wake.
And that sheer desperation brings us to a really famous trope: the neatly folded pile of clothes left on a Miami beach. It was November 1974, and those clothes belonged to John Stonehouse. He was a British politician absolutely drowning in financial scandal. So he faked a drowning, forged some passports using the names of his dead constituents, and fled all the way to Australia. But his master plan was completely destroyed by some of the worst cosmic irony imaginable. You see, detectives in Melbourne were surveilling his apartment complex because they were looking for a completely different missing British aristocrat, Lord Lucan. They noticed this suspicious new guy, questioned him, and boom, Stonehouse was caught. The ultimate escape, entirely undone by staggering bad luck.
But what happens when a fugitive actually gets lucky? Well, let's look at Benny Wint. In 1989, Wint was terrified of a looming prison sentence. So he did the classic move, swam out into the ocean in Florida, and vanished. He relocated to the American South, transformed himself into a guy named Bill Sweet, got a job, and literally started a completely new family who only ever knew him as Bill. For 2 entire decades, he lived that ultimate fantasy of the clean break. But here's the catch. While he was out there living his quiet new life, the world outside was quietly building a cage around him.
Because while Wint was hiding, this massive digital panopticon was being constructed. The 80s brought us the automated fingerprint identification system. Then came DNA profiling. Then suddenly we had international biometric databases, facial recognition, and even gait analysis, which tracks exactly how you walk. The net was tightening everywhere. Your physical body, your face, your iris, your stride suddenly became an inescapable passport. You can burn your paper documents all you want, but you absolutely cannot burn your own biology.
So how did Benny Wint's epic 20-year run finally come crashing down? It wasn't some dramatic FBI manhunt with helicopters. No, it was a totally routine traffic stop in 2009. The police officer pulled him over, ran the name Bill Sweet through a newly networked database, and a discrepancy got flagged. In just a few seconds, modern digital infrastructure collapsed 20 years of careful, paranoid deception. Wint wasn't outsmarted by a grizzled detective. He was caught by a computer server.
And today, that digital trap is pretty much absolute. Just look at the crazy 2021 case of Nicholas Alahaverdian. He was facing serious charges in the US, so he faked his own death from cancer and fled to Scotland under a completely fake name. He probably thought an ocean would keep him safe, but when he suffered a very real, genuine medical emergency in Glasgow, the hospital staff noticed his tattoos. And guess what? Those exact tattoos were logged in an international biometric database. The very second a doctor looked at his arm, his entire elaborate pseudocide instantly evaporated. Game over.
Which brings us right back to where we started. Remember John Darwin, the guy who walked into the police station with fake amnesia? Well, his massive, multi-year lie and his wife's tearful public grieving was totally dismantled by the most modern weapon of all, a digital footprint. A single, smiling photograph of the two of them together in Panama had been uploaded to a real estate website months earlier. In the age of social media, the world is quite literally always watching, and it never, ever forgets a face. But honestly, beyond the digital traps and the cool detective work, we really have to look at the agonizing human toll of this crime. The person faking their death might feel this rush of liberation, but they leave behind absolute devastation. John Darwin forced his own sons to mourn his death while he hid just a few feet away. Benny Wint's second family had to wake up one day and discover their father, their husband, was a complete fiction. The debts, the lies, the grief, none of that actually disappears. The escapee just forces the innocent people they left behind to carry the immense crushing weight of their betrayal. So it's pretty safe to say the golden age of vanishing is officially over. The digital world has made it practically impossible to outrun your identity. Your data, your face, your biometrics, they follow you, patient and inexorable until the distance finally closes. Which leaves us with a pretty haunting realization to think about. When you are stitched this tightly into the fabric of society, and the internet remembers literally every mistake you've ever made, can you ever truly escape who you are? Or are we all, for better or worse, permanently trapped in the lives we've built?